Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement, and I do appreciate the speed with which he's come to the House today. But, Mr. Speaker, here we are again. Another year, another Chinese spy scandal. And the backdrop to it is this government's failed policy of appeasement. The government must now, surely, be coming to the realisation that unless the United Kingdom stands up to these threats, our country will continue to be treated with disdain. We watched how the government allowed the Chinese spy case involving members of this House to collapse. We watched as, despite the interference in our democracy, the government approved the Chinese mega-embassy in London. And we watched as the Prime Minister went to Beijing, cap in hand, begging for trade deals to mitigate the costs of his own disastrous economic policy. We in this House watched as these things happen, and the Chinese state watched too, and saw that it could act with impunity. And the Minister says that there is no trade-off between democracy, our democratic and national interests and security interests, and our economic interests. But I'm afraid that is exactly what has happened. Now, I do understand the Minister will be unable to say very much about the new case, but I think we all know what we're dealing with here. So I hope he will be clear about what the government's response is going to be. And I hope he will talk a little bit about whether this case touches on members in this House. Because whilst we've been here, the BBC and The Guardian have reported that one of those arrested is the spouse of a sitting Labour MP, and that another is the spouse of a former Labour MP. Given that this is being reported in the press, will the Minister confirm whether or not this is true? Will he also give a cast-iron guarantee to this House that the government will do everything in its power to prevent this case from collapsing? We have seen this show before. Will he promise that, unlike last time, the Chinese ambassador will be summoned by ministers and told that aggressive interference in our country and its democracy will no longer be tolerated? And will he, actually, Mr. Speaker, I should say how right you were to deny that ambassador access to this House? Will he also commit to placing China now on the enhanced tier of foreign influence registration? The Minister says that China presents a series of threats, but during the last spy scandal, the government refused to say the crucial words, that China posed a risk to our national security, and they wouldn't publicly accept that China was opposed or hostile to the interests of the United Kingdom. Can he really accept that can he now accept that this position is no longer tenable? The Minister says that if there is proven evidence of attempts by China to interfere with UK sovereign affairs, the government will impose severe consequences and hold all actors involved to account. Look, we sincerely hope that this is true. But it wasn't true last time, Mr. Speaker. And so here we are again. And we will, unless this government finally steps up, be back here time and time again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his response? I mean, I'm grateful to him for acknowledging the speed at which the government has sought to brought forward a statement. And I know that he and right honourable and honourable members will understand that there are very strict limitations in terms of what I can say about what is obviously now a live police investigation. But let me also say that I hope I speak for all sides of the House when I say that these are the most serious matters that require us as a House to put the protection of our democracy above any political point scoring, and that is the way in which we should approach these proceedings. Now, he's sought, for reasons that I understand, to critique the government's position, and I understand why he sought to do that. But I can say to him that I am confident in the government's response to this incident and to our wider agenda on countering political interference. But of course it is right that members from across this House have the opportunity to scrutinise government policy and to ask questions, and that is precisely why we've moved at pace to provide an opportunity for them to do so. I also want to give the member opposite and other right honourable and honourable members a guarantee that, given the sensitivity of these issues, and the obvious need to protect the operational activity of our police and the security services, we will look for other opportunities to provide appropriate briefings to the relevant members across this House by the relevant experts to ensure that they can be updated in a way that we are simply not able to do in this House. Now, the Honourable Gentleman did raise a number of questions, and I know that he will understand that there are strict limitations in terms of what I can say. But let me give him an assurance of the seriousness with which we take these matters. I've always believed that the work that takes place, led by government but across this House to defend our democracy, should be a shared endeavour. The Defending Democracy Task Force was an initiative brought forward by the previous government. This government has invested in it. It is the fulcrum point by which we coordinate activity across government and with law enforcement partners, working very closely with Mr Speaker and the Parliamentary security authorities here in the House to ensure that our elected representatives are properly protected against the threats that we face. And I give him an assurance of the government's absolute determination to stand with all members to ensure that they are properly protected. Now, he knows, because we've had these exchanges on numerous occasions, that matters relating to prosecutions are very specifically matters for the Crown Prosecution Service. And it isn't for ministers from the dispatch box to opine and to make judgments on them, because the CPS is rightly independent of government. But he does know, as do other honourable members, how extremely disappointed the government were that the trial in last autumn did not proceed. Clearly, as he will understand, there is a crucial difference in that charges in that particular case had been brought forward under the Official Secrets Act of 1911. But I am confident that the National Security Act of 2023 provides the robust legislation that we need to address the threats that we undoubtedly face. The honourable member mentioned FIRS, and I understand why he decided to do so. FIRS is an important capability that comes from the National Security Act. It is still a relatively new tool, and we're seeking to ensure that we are able to derive the maximum capability, the operational capability from it. But I can say to him that we haven't made any final decisions as to whether we will be placing other countries on the enhanced tier, but we keep that under very close review. Mr Speaker, as I've made clear, this government will simply not tolerate attempts to interfere in our democracy. We've already taken tough action to strengthen our defences against foreign interference, and we will not hesitate to take further steps where they are necessary.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I recently made a submission to the Rycroft Review about my concerns about Chinese communist regime influence on the Labour Party. The Minister will understand, given that we now understand that the partner of a sitting Labour MP and the partner of a former Labour MP have been arrested today, the Minister will understand why I shall be updating that review ahead of my meeting with the Rycroft Review next week. Could the Minister confirm whether or not the Rycroft Review can take account of these arrests, or whether it will need to be extended until charges are not made?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman that he's taken the opportunity to contribute to the Rycroft Review, not least because he and a number of his colleagues have an expert insight into the consequences of foreign interference. And I hope he's very much taken the opportunity to reflect on that and to feed that into the review. The review itself, of course, is being conducted independently by Philip Rycroft. He will report by the end of this month, which means, and of course it is independent, that it's absolutely time and space for him to reflect on any events that have taken place recently. This is an important piece of work, and it will inform government policy, not least in terms of cracking down on some of the foreign money, well, all of the foreign money that should not be in our politics. Again, it's a matter that honourable members in his party know quite a bit about.
Speaker, China is a risk, and we've got so much evidence of that. But despite this, the Secretary of State for Energy Security has signed an energy deal with China, which gives them cooperation with us on batteries, on offshore wind, on cables, on inverters. It effectively gives them access to our energy grid, and this is a massive risk. As Security Minister, was he consulted by the Secretary of State for Energy Security about this deal before it was signed?
She raises an important point, Mr. Speaker. I can give her and the House the assurances that we've got checks and balances in place to ensure that decisions such as the ones that she's referred to are made in a way that enables our continued national security. We work collaboratively across government. It is a system that we inherited from the previous government, but we will do everything that we can to make sure that we are taking informed judgments. Where it's appropriate to take judgments that will aid economic advantage, of course we will do so. But underpinning all of that will be decisions to ensure that we make sure that nothing undermines our national security.
Luke Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure I join all colleagues in this chamber to share my shock at the news this morning, but also the disgust at the news that the Chinese state had targeted the partners of sitting and former MPs. So, from a personal perspective, can I ask that the government and the Minister ensures that those who are affected are supported for this utterly outrageous targeting of those closest to them? But turning to the practicalities of what that may imply, can he reassure us all around the chamber that if through the inquiries any suggestion that information was accessed through a sitting or former MP that may well have affected the decision-making of the government, particularly towards the Chinese embassy, that that decision will be paused, will be reviewed and potentially reversed?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know that the Honourable Gentleman understands that I can't comment about the specifics relating to individuals. I can say to him that, along with the Director General of MI5, I briefed the chief executives of political parties here in the UK just recently, including his own party. One of the points that was made at that briefing is that people who are involved in politics shouldn't make a view that it is only people who serve in government or in particular kind of positions of authority and responsibility who are a target. All of those who are involved in the wider political ecosystem are in play here, and that is an important message for people in this and outside of this place to understand. I'm grateful for the other point that he made. He knows the government's position with regard to the embassy. There's nothing more I can say about that now.
Dr. Neil Shastri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I know how seriously the Minister takes national security, and he will feel keenly any interference with our democracy. But the 4,500 Hong Kongers who live in the borough of Solihull will take cold comfort from the words that officials have been demarched. Can the Minister guarantee that the Chinese ambassador to the UK will be summoned by the Foreign Secretary for an interview without coffee?
Well, I'm grateful to him, and he's right. I do take these things incredibly seriously, and I'm grateful to the point he made about Hong Kongers in his constituency. I mean, I can say to him that I have personally raised concerns regarding the arrest warrants and bounties directly with Chinese authorities, and he will have heard the remarks that I made earlier on with regard to officials being démarched. The Hong Kongers have an important role and play an important contribution in our country. He knows the government's position with regard to transnational repression. A lot of work has taken place through the Defending Democracy Task Force to make sure that people are and feel like they're protected. If he thinks there's more we should be doing, I'd always be very happy to discuss it with him.
Liz Roberts.
It's a source of concern that 2 of the 3 men arrested were arrested in Wales, and that they have close associations with the Labour Party. Given that the Senedd goes to the polls in just over 2 months, in the shadow, of course, of the Nathan Gill scandal, what support is to be given to the Electoral Commission to ensure that there are sufficient resources to safeguard those elections against the growing threat of foreign interference?
Well, she's right to raise the importance of the work that the Electoral Commission do. They are a key member of the Defending Democracy Task Force, and we work very closely to make sure that they've got the powers that they need to do the difficult job that's asked of them. She will understand, obviously, that the Rycroft Review and the representation of the People's Bill will not provide legislative change in advance of elections that are taking place in May, which is precisely why we're working very closely with the devolved institutions, and we will be having further contact with them over the coming weeks in order to ensure that the important elections that are taking place around the country in May take place in a fair and free environment. That's what we all want to see.
Mr.
Speaker, can the Security Minister confirm whether the partner of the sitting Labour MP arrested on espionage charges of spying for China had a parliamentary pass?
Well, I'm disappointed that the honourable gentleman didn't ask me about furs, because he's consistently done so, and I always enjoy our exchanges. He will understand I have come here at extremely short notice in order to provide an update to the House. I can't get into the operational details of matters that took place just a few hours ago.
Just to reassure you, the answer is no. Carl Locker.
Speaker, the Minister has said numerous times that the Government always prioritise UK national security. Those words ring hollow whenever we think of the Chinese embassy and the fact that this Government has granted a mega embassy close to underground cables carrying highly sensitive data. Surely, in light of these highly concerning developments, this Government should actually show courage, strength and leadership, and with immediate effect revoke the decision in the interest of national security.
With great respect to the Honourable Lady, and I always listen very carefully to what she has to say, because she represents a part of the United Kingdom that I have a long-standing interest in, but she's not right to say what she says about the embassy. I refer her to the comments that have been made by the ISC, comments that have been made by the Director Generals of our security services. The arrangement that underpins the Chinese embassy involves the reduction of the diplomatic estate in London from 7 sites down to 1. I hope, when she looks at it in those terms, the Honourable Lady will understand that there are national security advantages from this proposal.
Does Luke Evans?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A Member of Parliament's partner has been accused of spying for China. Now, the Minister's been asked several times, has the Foreign Secretary or the Home Secretary specifically asked and summoned the ambassador to come and explain themselves? If not, why not?
The honourable member, I think, will have heard from my opening remarks that Chinese officials have been démarched both in London and in Beijing. I hope that he will also understand that we are referencing events that happened earlier this morning.
Speaker, as Home Secretary, I delivered the National Security Act largely because of the threat posed by China. Now, if the media reports are true, what will the Minister... Well, does the Minister agree that the perception of conflict of interest, compromise and bias are just as damaging as actual conflict of interest, perception, compromise and bias? And will he reassure the House today that the Labour Party will do everything and take appropriate measures to protect the probity of the investigation and maintain public confidence?
Well, let me say to the Right Honourable Lady that, of course, the Government will do everything to ensure that the counter-terrorism police, the intelligence agencies have whatever they need to conduct this investigation. And as she will understand from her time as Home Secretary, that is conducted independently of government. It's not for the Security Minister or for the Home Secretary or for any minister for that matter to start getting involved in the business of an investigation. That would not be appropriate, and I hope that she would acknowledge that. Let me just say something positive to her, because she was Home Secretary when the National Security Act was introduced in 2023. This is a vital piece of legislation. This is making a real difference to our ability to counter those who would seek to do us harm. It is a valuable tool in our armoury, but where there is a view that we need to add more tools to that armoury, we will definitely do so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The name of the Labour Member of Parliament whose husband has been arrested is widely circulating via the media. I don't intend to name that Member of Parliament, but if the reports are true, that Member of Parliament sits on a select committee that would have information which is sensitive, maybe even secret, and indeed, through totally legitimate means, has visited a number of our defence sites across the country. Has there been, and will there be, an urgent review of what sensitive information that Member of Parliament might have been party to? And, at the appropriate juncture, would he release any correspondence between his department and that Member of Parliament around things like the Chinese embassy and other matters relating to China?
Well, Mr. Speaker, on the honourable gentleman's first point, he will understand that membership of a select committee is not a matter for government, but I know that Mr. Speaker will have heard the point that he has made, as have I. In terms of his second point, he will understand that we're dealing with events that took place a couple of hours ago. I haven't seen what is being reported online because I've obviously been here, but I will give consideration to the matter that is raised.